Hello, Chris. So thank you for agreeing to do an interview for the Algonquin course. It's very nice for students to get a chance to see the perspective of professionals. So what is your current position? What is it that you do in that position?
So I'm the coordinator of Street Smarts Outreach program with Jewish Family Services. We are a volunteer-based nonprofit program helping people suffering from poverty, addiction, trauma, and mental health in our local community.
All right. And what are some of the things that you do on the job? What is your position?
So my position as coordinator is basically to run the program. I run all aspects of the program, from our outreach, our education program, to our advocacy program, ensuring that everyone is working together to help those people suffering in our community.
And so on the outreach component of your job, what does that entail?
So our outreach is volunteer-based. We have volunteers that go out on a nightly basis between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. Around various areas in our community. And we provide direct outreach. So it's boots on the ground, and we carry emergency supplies. So socks, juice, Nutrigrain bars, basically just things to keep people somewhat healthy while they're out on the street. And we develop relationships with those people. We listen to them empathetically. We don't give any judgments. We don't force them to do anything to change their situation if they don't want to. We're just there to listen and to give them whatever help they will accept at the time.
So if a client is consistently, showing symptoms of mental health or signs of substance abuse, and they are refusing any referrals you throw at them, how would you handle that situation when they're refusing treatment?
Well, with Street Smarts, we are under the mission that we are there to help the person who wants help and when they want help. So it's something that is a concept that's not understood by a lot of organizations. You have to want the help. In the end, that person is going to make the decision on their life, and you have to be there to support them on whatever decision they make. And in doing that, you build trust with them. And in building that trust, they tend to understand more of wanting to get help, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So, like when I go out and talk to somebody, we're not out there to be like, oh, you need to do this, this, and this if you want to get this. We go out, we listen to what they have to say. We tell them about our own experiences, and we let them know that when they're ready and they want to try something, we will provide that resource for them. And we will make sure that the resource that they're going to is appropriate for them as well. Because there are many different resources out there, and you need to choose the right one for the right person.
And how do you do that? So one of the things that I'm really interested in relaying to students is a little bit about how do you briefly screen someone in such a setting, right? You're out on the street. It's not a paperwork type job. It's boots on the ground, like you were saying. So what are some of the screening systems that you use in place, and how do you determine what is a good fit for someone?
Well, first of all, the relationships that we build in them are built over time. So it gives us more of an advantage to ensure that we kind of make better recommendations, because when you listen to somebody for a long period of time, you really get to know them and get to know what their issues are and get a sense of what would be best route to try and help them. So that, in a sense, is an advantage for us, because we're not, as you said, in most counseling situations or addiction assessments, they're quick and they're trying to give people a quick resource to get things done quickly. Whereas because we're waiting for them to come to us, we get to know them a lot better, and we can pick a better way. And when we bring them to these places, we like to call it a warm handoff. So we tend to bring them directly to these resources at some point, or try to introduce the people that are at these resources directly to them. Sometimes our clients aren't able to go to somebody's office because, you know, they're stricken with poverty. So we'll encourage, you know, to the resource to come to us, and we'll meet at a Tim Hortons and all talk together. And that way it's a little bit more comfortable with the person on the street, because they're comfortable in that situation because they're with somebody that they have a relationship with. Who also, I should have mentioned earlier, most of our volunteers also are lived experienced, which is also a big plus for us because they have that understanding of what the person's going through in a sense. You can never understand exactly what a person's going through because everybody's journey is slightly different, but knowing that somebody has gone through their own journey and come out on the other side is kind of our positive role modeling with our volunteers. And that's also a big asset for us as well, because when they do ask for help, they know that it's coming from the heart, that we're there to help them, because those are volunteers. They're not paid people that are out there, you know, doing the job that a authority is telling them to do. They're out there out of the kindness of their own hearts, there to listen and help them as best they can.
Right. And so it sounds like building long-term bridges, warm handovers, peer mentorship, and compassion is kind of the heart of how you're building these positive relationships with your clients.
Yeah, it's all about positivity. I mean, when you're positive with somebody on a consistent basis and you're not that authority figure in their life, it's much easier to develop a relationship with them where that person does actually trust you. And it does take a lot of time, unfortunately. It's not something that happens instantly. I don't go out and meet somebody out on the street and in, you know, 2 weeks they're like, oh, I want to change my life, everything's great now. It takes time because that person has to go through that journey on their own. Because in dealing with social issues, as I stated earlier, the biggest thing is that person's always going to be there. Those social issues will follow that person wherever they go. There's not always going to be certain things or facilities or people that can help them. They have to make those decisions on their own. And we're there when they're ready. That's our biggest point.
Right. And so what is it that kind of hints you, right? So as the outreach worker, when you're building those relationships with these clients, what are some of the hints for you in behavior or reaction that tells you that you have built a positive bond with this individual or this client?
There are many different ways to see when you build a bond with somebody. You can just feel it. I mean, Street Smarts in general, just the name Street Smarts has been around in the city. This will be our 20th year now. And if you go out into the community and mention Street Smarts, people will light up because they know what we're about and why we're out there, because we've been doing this for such a long time. You know, I get told, God bless you 10,000 times a day. And these are genuine ones. It's not just, you know, something, you know, oh yeah, God bless you. You know, these are people who are genuine in need and are happy to see you. And you can see it. Nothing is better when you walk up on somebody and, you know, they're sitting there and they see you and their face lights up and they smile. And, you know, it brightens your day just as much as it brightens their day, because they're like, oh, hey, how's it going? You know, and then you can sit there and talk with that person. I mean, there are plenty of times I've sat and talked with people for 2-3 hours, just listening to their stories. And that's all sometimes someone needs. I get asked quite often what, you know, people can do on a regular basis to help people in our community, especially suffering from poverty and homelessness. And a lot of them don't want to give money or things like that because they don't want to encourage bad behavior. And I always say the same thing, acknowledge their existence. Say, hi, how are you today? You know, I hope you stay warm tonight, you know, buy them a coffee, you know, go buy them a pair of socks, you know, buy them a pair of socks. Honestly, that would be a great thing.
Right.
Those simple little gestures give that person, again, hope for themselves. And once they have hope for themselves, they'll feel worthy enough to want to get help.
And so it sounds like you also use a lot of an empowerment based model. And I'm loving that I'm hearing that kind of like respect for client decision making, right? It's very client centered. They're leading, you know, the signal of green lights, and you're listening to red lights and respecting those boundaries that they set out for you. And speaking of boundaries, I just kind of want to know, what are some examples of some of the boundaries that you feel are very necessary to put in place in order to continue to maintain a healthy relationship with these clients?
So boundaries are a very important thing, because you have to make sure that you're not taken advantage of, or that someone will hurt you in some way, whether it be mentally, physically, or emotionally. So some of the things that we do is we're very careful on our interactions with clients. You know, they know that when we're working, we have our badges on, we have our bags on, and things like that. So there's boundaries set for, you know, if you see us, you know, try not to approach us, because, you know, it might be a situation where they don't want to get involved in as well. Honestly, we don't have a lot of problem with the boundaries, because we're not an authority figure over them. So they don't try and cross those boundaries with us, to be honest, very often. I mean, every now and then you have to ask somebody to step back, or, you know, set those boundaries with them verbally. But it's very, very limited, because we're not an authority figure in their lives. So it's easier for me to kind of just be there and speak with them, and not have to go through that a lot.
Right. Perfect. And my final question for you is, in your job, I know that a lot of bridges within the community have to be built in order to serve the population of clients that you're serving. And I know that some of them are the hidden homeless that do not access shelters. And I know amongst your clients are substance users, as well as people who struggle with mental health. And so how did you identify who you needed to build bridges with in the community in order to better serve your population of clients? How did you identify who to connect with?
So Street Smarts is connecting with organizations that are out there to benefit the people in our local community. We do research on what organizations do, how they can help, and specifically how they can help with different social issues, different genders, and different cultures, because there are many, many different types of social issues that are not cross-cultural and not cross-gender, that need to be specific. So we pride ourselves on doing a lot of research, and we go out and we speak to these organizations. We find out what their programs are about, and exactly who they can help and how long, which is very, very important. And we continue to build these relationships over time with these organizations, so that we can benefit with each other and make sure that we grow. I'll give you an example. We are a big part of the diversion program here in Ottawa. The diversion program was created because people in our local community were being brought to hospitals and jails when they didn't really need to be. They just kind of needed a place that wasn't the street to sober up. So a program was created at one of the shelters, Shepherds of Good Hope. They have nurses there now. So now that we can call a van, and they can be taken to those nurses and evaluated there before they need to go anywhere else, which saves the city time with hospitals and police. Other big things at Street Smarts and our resources, as I spoke earlier, we have 3 different sections. So we have our outreach section, which I wanted to speak mostly on. We also have our education and advocacy section. So our advocacy section is where we advocate to the city and other government officials to improve programming. We were a big part of the declaration of emergency housing here in Ottawa last year. And we're continuing to push the city to build more affordable housing.
And I
Uh,
just want to kind of comment on that because I know, and I want to make sure it gets captured in the video, that you actually do take politicians on outreach walks, correct? To show them. What is your goal when you bring a politician out on the streets for a walk?
there's a few goals in mind. I mean, my biggest goal is to show them the people in our local community that are suffering and why they're suffering, what the boundaries are to stop them from not suffering anymore. Those are my biggest focuses when bringing politicians and other people of influence out on walks. Because unfortunately, not everybody sees it the way that it should be seen. It's seen as a problem that needs to be swept under the rug quickly to get it out of public view, instead of actually fixing the root problems that are causing these things and these social issues such as poverty, trauma, mental health, and addiction. So, you know, we had Mayor Watson walk with us quite a few times. We've had many councilmen that work with us, Councilman Eagley, Councilman Fleury, Councilman McKenna. So we encourage them to fight for the people in their local community and reminding them that these are still people in our local community, even though they're not doing that well. And that's important to us. And as I said, the other biggest part is our education program as well. And that's where our education program comes in as well. It's a volunteer-based program where we bring our volunteers into schools and other community-based settings, and they basically tell their stories about their social issue. Because we want to humanize it, because this is something that is deeply personal to every single person. And there's not one person in the world that social issues such as poverty, trauma, mental health, and addiction haven't touched. So it's important to humanize that and make sure we let people know it's okay if you need help, and there are people out there who understand what you're going through and will bring you to what you need.
And so one thing I do just love about Street Smarts is the quick access, the no red tape. It's, you know, boots on the ground, building those rapport relationships with people over time, respecting their boundaries and not pushing on them, right? You're visible and you're out there. And like you said, everybody kind of knows you're out there. So it sounds like networking, explaining to other agencies who you are and what you do has been a big part of being able to support your clients at large.
It's
Yeah.
a big thing for me. When I took over as coordinator of the program, one of the first things I did is I began building those bridges with all these resources, with the city of Ottawa, and the councilmen and things like that, and all the drop-in centers, all the shelters. It was very important because if we don't work together, then we're working against each other. And we shouldn't be working against each other when it comes to helping our fellow human being. We should be working together. So the more we can collaborate and work together and pool our resources, because again, unfortunately with nonprofits, most of the time we are funded by the same entities, the same money the government has put aside for social issues. So we're all fighting for the same money. Now, fortunately, Street Smarts has been very fortunate in having generous donors where we didn't have to rely on city or government funding, but most organizations do. So they're constantly battling for these funds, where we need to be working together and collaborating our resources so that we can make the need for these resources less.
Right. Okay. So the last question that I have for you before I go, and thank you for your time, is what is the one thing above everything else that makes you show up for work every day?
That smile that I spoke of earlier. When I see somebody who is genuinely, and I know they're happy to see me, that brightness I bring to somebody's day is what keeps me going. It's this working in the social work field is very emotionally taxing. You go through mentally, emotionally, it is very difficult sometimes. Burnout rates are very high and you have to do a lot of self-care. But in the end, what keeps me going is knowing that me going out might just brighten somebody's day just a little bit, enough to keep them pushing forward in this life to get better.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time today. And I really respect what you do, and I'm thinking that our students are going to definitely benefit from some of the experiences you've shared today.
Thank you very much. And if anyone is interested, you can follow us on Facebook at JFS Street Smarts Ottawa. It's a lovely Facebook page that has all kinds of great things going on in our community and in our organization.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.